The Egyptian president hails the Egypt and EU summit as landmark and highlights strategic partnership and regional stability efforts. Egypt's intelligence chief advances Gaza ceasefire talks with Palestinian leaders amid U.S. coordination. And Putin discusses Russian oil supply impacts and warns against escalation. Good evening and welcome to Q News. It's 8 p.m. here in Cairo. I'm Mark Summers. Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi has described the Egypt-EU summit as a landmark event, the first of its kind between Europe and an Eastern Mediterranean nation. He emphasized that the European Union remains Egypt's leading trade partner and reaffirmed Cairo's commitment to deepening its strategic partnership with Europe. President el-Sisi said discussions covered regional crises, including Gaza, Libya and Sudan, highlighting Egypt's efforts to maintain the Gaza ceasefire and calling for European participation in Gaza's reconstruction. He stressed the need for the withdrawal of all foreign forces from Libya and reiterated Egypt's pivotal role in preventing irregular migration and fostering regional stability. Egypt's President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi has praised Belgium's principled stance and King Philippe's personal commitment to supporting the legitimate rights of the Palestinian people, reflected in Belgium's recognition of the State of Palestine. During their meeting at the Royal Palace in Brussels, King Philippe warmly welcomed President el-Sisi, praising the deep and historic ties between Egypt and Belgium and Egypt's pivotal role in mediating the Gaza ceasefire. The two leaders discussed regional developments, emphasizing peaceful solutions that preserve state sovereignty and unity. President el-Sisi invited King Philippe to attend the Grand Egyptian Museum's opening in November and expressed Egypt's readiness to expand bilateral investments, tourism, and cooperation across multiple sectors. Egypt's President el-Sisi has expressed Egypt's appreciation for the honourable stance adopted by the European Parliament in support of the Palestinian cause, notably its call to end the war and alleviate the suffering of Gaza residents. Meeting European Parliament President Roberta Metsola in Brussels on the sidelines of the EU-Egypt summit, President el-Sisi emphasised the need for joint Egyptian-European efforts to ensure the full implementation of the ceasefire, facilitate humanitarian aid and launch Gaza's reconstruction. The Egyptian president also underscored the importance of advancing the EU-Egypt strategic partnership and strengthening parliamentary dialogue as a bridge between Mediterranean people. The European Parliament president welcomed Egypt's hosting of the Gaza Reconstruction and Recovery Conference in November. European Parliament President Roberta Metsola has thanked Egypt for its decisive role in achieving the Gaza ceasefire, stressing that without the efforts of President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, the agreement would not have been possible. President el-Sisi reviewed Egypt's ongoing efforts to promote regional peace and stability, including mediating the ceasefire and hosting the high-level Sharm el-Sheikh Peace Summit. He emphasized consolidating the truce, ensuring sufficient humanitarian aid, and delivering medical care to the wounded. Metsola hailed Egypt's balanced policies and pivotal regional role, describing it as a cornerstone of Middle Eastern stability. The meeting also discussed curbing illegal migration, expanding legal work and study opportunities, and strengthening parliamentary coordination between Egypt and the European Union. The European Council has welcomed the Gaza ceasefire agreement and the outcomes of the Sharm el-Sheikh Peace Summit, urging all parties to fully implement its phases and avoid actions that could endanger the truce. It reaffirmed support for the two-state solution in line with UN resolutions and emphasized the unhindered delivery of humanitarian aid to Gaza, along with ensuring the independent work of the UN and humanitarian agencies. The Council expressed readiness to help rebuild Gaza and support the Palestinian Authority, called on Israel to de-escalate tensions in the West Bank and halt illegal settlement expansion, and voiced backing for Lebanon's sovereignty, Syria's peaceful transition, and enhanced European defense cooperation and Russian threats. Egypt and the European Union reaffirmed their shared ambition to continue deepening their long-term strategic relations and cooperation in addressing common global and regional challenges, enhancing mutual interests, and setting priorities for engagement. The final statement of the Egypt-EU summit, attended by President al-Sisi and the President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, emphasized that this summit marks a significant milestone in strengthening relations between Egypt and the European Union. It builds upon the Egypt-EU Association Agreement, the partnership priorities, and the Comprehensive Strategic Partnership Agreement. The European Union renewed its commitment to supporting Egypt's efforts to achieve macroeconomic stability and resilience through a support package worth €7.4 billion, aimed at reinforcing the Comprehensive Strategic Partnership, as announced last March. The President of Romania has said that he welcomes yesterday's in-depth and constructive discussion in Brussels with Egypt's President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi. In a post on X, Romania's president affirmed that his country firmly supports the European Union's objective of strengthening political and economic cooperation with Egypt, recognizing its vital role in promoting peace, stability, and regional balance. He said that Egypt remains a key partner in addressing the challenges of the Middle East, and its leadership continues to be instrumental in advancing diplomatic and security efforts. The Romanian president added that in this spirit, Romania reaffirms its commitment to work closely with Egypt to ensure the effective implementation of President Trump's peace plan, which aims to consolidate lasting peace and foster development across the region. Amid shifting global dynamics, Egypt and the European Union reaffirm a strategic alliance built on peace, stability, and shared regional priorities.
Egypt and the European Union share deep, long-standing ties that were elevated in March 2024 to a strategic partnership. Both sides face interlinked challenges requiring close coordination, foremost among them achieving peace in the Middle East. Regional stability directly affects European security, while Cairo counts on European support for Arab priorities, particularly an end to the Gaza war, rejection of displacement, reconstruction of the Gaza Strip, and a two-state solution. The participation of top European leaders in the Sharm el-Sheikh Peace Summit, which resulted in the Gaza ceasefire agreement, underscored the depth of Egypt-EU cooperation and Europe's recognition of Cairo's pivotal regional role. Partnership efforts also expanded in combating irregular migration, with the EU endorsing Egypt's approach to address root causes by ending conflicts in migrant-producing countries. The Union has also supported Egypt's hosting of millions of refugees, while Cairo firmly rejects the notion of closed migrant camps.
There is now pain.
On broader regional issues, Egypt and the EU are working to ease tensions in the Red Sea, safeguard global trade routes, ensure maritime security, and help extinguish crises in Sudan, Libya, and the Horn of Africa, while reinforcing cooperation across the Mediterranean. As a regional linchpin and a global partner, Egypt's evolving partnership with the EU remains a cornerstone for stability and prosperity across 3 continents.
Now let's move on to the latest developments from Gaza.
العظيم ولا حبة رز، والله العظيم ولا حبة عدس. ما فيش أكل، ما فيش شرب، عندي بنت 2.5 صارت نص.
Egypt's permanent representative to the United Nations has welcomed the advisory opinion issued by the International Court of Justice, affirming Israel's obligations in the occupied Palestinian territories. He emphasized that Israel must fully withdraw from all occupied lands to achieve lasting peace in the region. The ambassador reiterated Egypt's unwavering solidarity with Lebanon and Syria, affirming their right to safeguard their sovereignty and territorial integrity. He stressed that peace and stability can only be realized through adherence to international law and the fulfillment of all legal responsibilities arising from occupation. Egypt has dispatched its 57th aid convoy under the Zaid al-Azza Provision of Honor from Egypt to Gaza initiative, from Rafah to Gaza via Kerem Abu Salem crossing. The convoy carries over 6,000 tons of urgent humanitarian aid to the Gaza Strip. It also includes 2,400 tons of food baskets and flour, more than 2,000 tons of vital medical and relief supplies, and around 1,800 tons of fuel, underscoring Egypt's ongoing commitment to supporting the people of Gaza. Since its launch on July 27th, the Egyptian initiative has sent thousands of tons of diverse aid, from baby formula and medicine to food and fuel. With over 35,000 volunteers, the Egyptian Red Crescent continues its coordination efforts, ensuring uninterrupted aid delivery through the Egyptian side of the Rafah border crossing despite the prolonged crisis. Egypt's General Intelligence Service head, Major General Hassan Rashad, has met with Palestinian Vice President Hussein el-Sheikh in the presence of the Palestinian intelligence chief to advance Egypt's ongoing efforts to end the Gaza crisis. Both sides agreed to support and continue implementing the ceasefire agreement in the Strip, while firmly rejecting the Knesset's decision to annex any Palestinian territories. Vice President el-Sheikh reaffirmed the resolutions of the Arab Summit regarding the Palestinian Authority and the importance of Palestinian unity. That comes as Cairo is intensifying coordination with the US to consolidate the Gaza ceasefire and promote a just and lasting peace in the region. Egyptian sources stated that Egypt is intensifying contacts with the US to consolidate the ceasefire and achieve a just peace in the region. Meanwhile, Egypt is hosting talks among Palestinian factions to achieve intra-Palestinian consensus as part of the second phase of President Trump's peace plan. Later, Egypt's General Intelligence Service head met with the Secretary General of the Palestinian National Initiative and to discuss Egypt's ongoing efforts to achieve Palestinian national reconciliation and implement President Trump's Gaza ceasefire plan. Both sides reaffirmed their commitment to supporting and advancing the ceasefire agreement. Major General Rashad also received the Secretary General of the Democratic Front of the Liberation of Palestine, Fadel Suleiman, as part of Cairo's continued mediation to end the Gaza crisis. Egyptian sources announced that delegations from Hamas, led by Khalil al-Hayya, and Fatah, headed by Vice President Hussein el-Sheikh, and the Palestinian intelligence chief Majid Faraj, are holding talks to address post-war arrangements and advance Palestinian unity. Now for more, let's go across to Riham, who is in our newsroom. Riham.
Thank you, Mark. For further analysis, we're joined from Cairo by Al-Ahram Managing Editor Mohammed Izzuddin. Welcome, sir, to Qnews. Let's start off by asking you, how might Egypt's role as a mediator influence the dynamics between Palestinian factions as well as the overall peace process in the Gaza crisis so far?
Thank you for having me on Qnews. Of course, Cairo is a center point for discussions on getting back the understanding with the Palestinian factions, and then also having balance between the Palestinian factions as a main mediator in the peace process and in regional stability under the U.S. and also the international community and the leaders of the countries. Today there were important meetings in Cairo between the leaders of the factions, and then also from the secretary from the GIS head and the GIS head in Palestine too, and all these meetings aim to find a unified Palestinian stance towards the next phase and to guarantee that the ceasefire will hold up in the, phase 1 and then moving on to the next phases. And this also comes amid the important meetings held by President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi with the leaders of the European Union to find more support to reconstruct Gaza in the conference that will be held in the next month. And all of these efforts come also the efforts from the front, and also the constant communication with the US and Qatar. And there is a huge importance and a strategic importance for such meetings that are being held today, and also to keep up such meetings in the future so that the efforts are unified when it comes to everything that has to do with Gaza in the next phases, especially that the committee is being formed now, and up till now we don't have names, but we know that we need to unify the stances, and this is what Egypt is doing currently.
Also, could you tell us about the unified efforts and the coordination between Egypt and the United States when it comes to maintaining the Gaza ceasefire and keeping it a viable option? How is this going to maintain a prospect of wider regional peace in general?
Of course, yes, Egypt's role is crucial, and honestly, if it wasn't for the Egyptian efforts, the continued effort and their insistence on stopping the war and then reaching the peace process, the U.S. government wouldn't have changed its stance that everyone was seeing with Israel, but with the intensifying the pressure from the international community and also the internal government and the US and the Egyptian efforts in coordination with the USA, this Trump showed the peace plan and reaching a ceasefire and then the reconstruction. And this is because of President el-Sisi's efforts and the foreign ministry's efforts also that have put so much thought and effort into this, and the security measures. And so the U.S. government has reconsidered, and then these efforts came together, unified with the other mediators, of course. But Egypt's role in the current phase is a leading and crucial role. I don't want to say that it leads this phase towards reconstruction and delivering more aid trucks, in addition to guarantee a permanent ceasefire and not having any breaches from Israel's side or any breaches to the current truce.
Well, sir, you discussed or talked about the Palestinian factions having a talk to reunify them and make them into one faction that's going to be hosted by Egypt. How do you think this contributes to the objectives that have been outlined by President Trump towards a permanent peace plan, and what challenges might these talks face?
Of course, there should be something that's very important, which is having one unified opinion from the Palestinian factions. Israel always depends on breaching the agreement or justifying their actions because there is no unified decision, and so the conflict here isn't and doesn't benefit the Palestinian cause or and doesn't benefit also the ceasefire agreement or the new phases for reconstruction, and in addition to the importance of having stability, because there are international organizations that are funding in addition to some of the Gulf countries, and so there will be a huge importance to have the factions agree to one opinion. And I can say that the the Egyptian intelligence have played a very crucial role here under President El-Sisi's support to have unified opinion and not breaching any of the points to the Trump's plan that Egypt was a main mediator in, and also so that this agreement can help to deliver more aid trucks. Around 15 to 20% of aid only are delivered to the Palestinian land in the Gaza Strip, and so we need more aid and to agree on guaranteeing internal security, and then also to coordinate with the new committee that will be formed of Palestinians in addition to some international people under the support of the US and also under the support of Turkey, Qatar and Egypt, brokered by the US. And so the daily meetings that the head of the intelligence had with the Palestinian factions had a very important role in highlighting how security and peace will keep on to make sure that that peace will be permanent in the upcoming phase, and having the Rafah crossing operating again.
As you said, obviously this is a difficult task. Now, there's a diverse number of factions when it comes to the Palestinians, like Fatah, Hamas, the Democratic Front for Liberation, and many others. What kind of complexities does this reveal about achieving what you've described, a unified voice when it comes to the Palestinian national reconciliation?
Egypt has hosted a lot of meetings and talks in the past period and over the last years, even before the 7th of October crisis. And so the Palestinian factions case that they can intervene in, Egypt can be the only one to intervene to bring the factions together. Egypt has played a very important role over the past phases, and now they are putting even more effort now, because reaching a ceasefire and guaranteeing security in this phase is the foundation to go on with the next phases, so that there are no barriers or obstacles from Israel's side, and then also having the international peace. And then also we cannot forget that there will be funding to start the reconstruction, and so the Palestinian factions have to put together their efforts and to have a unified opinion, and then in addition to having the factions represented by leaders, and then to decide on who will take on the process on the condition that they are independent and not have any agenda. And so, yeah, this is very important, and I think that the agreement on the wide headlines here between the Palestinian factions will have such a positive outcome in the future to keep up the ceasefire and start the reconstruction, and also showing the Palestinian side.
Clear, sir. Thank you so much. From Cairo, that was Al-Ahram Managing Editor Mohammed Izzeddin. Thank you for joining us here on Q News. And now back to you, Mark, in our studio.
Thank you very much, Rehem Morsi, there in our newsroom. Thank you very much, Rehem. Now, France has urged Israel to remove all barriers hindering the delivery of humanitarian aid, allowing residents of Gaza and the West Bank access to essential goods and services. The French Foreign Ministry said Paris has taken note of the International Court of Justice's advisory opinion, affirming Israel's obligation to facilitate aid access and cooperate with the United Nations in Palestine. It reiterated France's full commitment to international law and to the vital role of the ICJ as the UN's principal judicial body. Arab and Islamic nations have issued strong condemnations of Israel's plans to annex parts of the occupied West Bank and extend its so-called sovereignty over illegal settlements. Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, the UAE and Qatar and other regional powers, along with the Arab League and the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, described the move as a grave escalation and a violation of international law and UN resolutions. They warned that Israel's annexation drive threatens regional stability, undermines peace prospects, and violates Palestinians' right to self-determination and statehood. US President Donald Trump has warned that Israel would lose all American support if it moves ahead with annexing the West Bank, saying he had made clear promises to Arab states to prevent such a step. Trump said some members of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's coalition are still pushing for annexation, but insisted it will not happen. He also revealed he had pressured Netanyahu to end the Gaza war, saying the world was tired of other attacks, adding that the conflict is now over and that Israel must uphold the ceasefire to maintain international and US backing. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has ordered coalition members to halt any new proposals to extend Israeli sovereignty. As some lawmakers backed an annexation bill against party rules. The move follows a stern warning from President Trump that Israel would lose all American support if it pursued annexation, a position echoed by Vice President J.D. Vance, who called the vote a reckless political maneuver. Israeli Foreign Minister Gideon Sa'ar says Israel is committed to ensuring the success of President Trump's plan for Gaza. In remarks reported by Reuters, Sa'ar stressed that both Hamas and the Jihad movement must lay down their arms, describing disarmament as a necessary step towards achieving stability and implementing the U.S. brokered roadmap for Gaza's post-war recovery.
Hills and mountains.
Now, moving on to Russia, and President Vladimir Putin said that he discussed with US President Trump the impact of situation with Russian oil supplies on global prices, including in the US. Putin stressed that Russia and the US have many areas for cooperation. He added that strikes deep into Russia will be an escalation. China's foreign ministry has reaffirmed its opposition to unilateral sanctions lacking international legal basis, responding to President Trump's new sanctions on Russian energy firms announced October 22nd. Trump targeted oil companies Lukoil and Rosneft for the first time in his second term, marking a shift in US policy amid frustration with Russia over the Ukraine conflict. Chinese spokesperson Guo Jiakun emphasized that dialogue and negotiation remain the only viable path to resolving the crisis, warning that coercion will not bring solutions. While Trump has imposed tariffs on India for buying discounted Russian oil, the US has not targeted China, another major Russian oil purchaser. And just before we go, let's recap the main headlines this evening. The Egyptian president hails the Egypt-EU summit as a landmark and highlights strategic partnership and regional stability efforts. And Egypt's intelligence chief advances Gaza ceasefire talks with Palestinian leaders amid the U.S. coordination. And Putin discusses the Russian oil supply impacts with Trump and warns against escalation. Well, for more stories and live updates, you can follow Q News on our social media platforms at Q News EGY. And from all of us here, thank you for watching and stay tuned for more updates 24 hours a day here from Q News.